Commander Vexer stood at the helm of the Dark Spear, his six-fingered hands clasped tightly behind his back as he stared through the massive forward viewport. Out there, floating serenely in the darkness, was a gleaming white ship, a massive vessel the size of a capital warship. But this ship didn't bristle with weapons. It bore a single, unmistakable symbol, a red cross, the universal sign of medical neutrality. To Vexer, it was a mockery. That, he growled, his mandibles clicking with disdain, is the greatest insult in the galaxy. A ship of that size, with that level of engineering dedicated to healing. His voice was full of venom, typical humans, wasting potential. Behind him, his bridge officers exchanged uneasy glances. Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren, whose copper-colored scales usually shimmered with quiet confidence, now seemed tense at her tactical station. "Sir," she began cautiously, "that vessel is currently hosting over 2,000 patient civilians, soldiers, even children. They're treating the wounded from the Sentu conflict. There are representatives from at least a dozen species on board." Vexer waved a dismissive hand. "Exactly. That's why humans will never rule this galaxy. They squander their advantages on charity, on mercy." He nearly spat the word. "They turn warships into hospitals, and act like that makes them noble." Through the viewport, he could see small shuttles docking and departing. Medical teams moving with mechanical precision. Ships unloading the injured, then rushing off again to collect more. He could just imagine the human doctors inside, bustling through crowded halls, saving lives with their vaunted technology. All of it, in his mind, was pathetic. "They have the tech to dominate entire sectors," Vexer muttered, more to himself now. "But instead, they choose this." Senior Officer Blake Chen, a four-eyed humanoid from a species known for its diplomatic tact, cleared his throat. "Commander, scans show the ship is well over capacity. They've converted their cargo bays into makeshift treatment wards. Some of the engineering spaces, too. It seems they're pushing their systems to the limit just to accommodate the wounded." "Of course they are," Vexer sneered. "Humans always stretch themselves thin, always trying to help everyone." He turned to Blake. "Tell me, what do they gain from this? What resources do they take? What territory do they seize?" Blake hesitated. His eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of discomfort among his kind. "Nothing material, Commander." "They form diplomatic ties, improve relations." "Relations?" Vexer repeated, shaking his head. "The galaxy isn't built on goodwill. It's built on power, on fear." The bridge fell silent. Then Vexer's voice dropped to a near whisper, his tone ice cold. "That ship is a symbol, a monument to everything weak in the galaxy. A perfect target." Kara Wren turned from her console, her expression stricken. "Commander, you can't be serious. That's a medical ship. It's protected by every known interstellar law." "I am serious," Vexer said calmly, "and I've never been more certain. Destroying Mercy's light will remind this galaxy of who sets the rules and who enforces them." "Sir," Blake Chen stepped forward, alarmed, his ceremonial rank chains clinking faintly. "An attack on a hospital ship violates every treaty the Dominion has signed." The political backlash politics. Vexer barked out a bitter laugh. "Politics is for weak species. Species that can't fight. We are the Dominion. Our fleets span hundreds of systems. What can the humans possibly do to us?" He turned and faced his crew. The overhead lighting cast sharp shadows across his ridged face, illuminating the scars he'd earned in countless campaigns. He looked every bit the battle-hardened leader of the Dominion. "Humanity needs a lesson," he declared. "They are not an elder race. They haven't earned their place. They're children playing at peacekeeping, pretending their compassion makes them strong. It's time they learned the truth." "Sir, there are other Dominion ships in the area," Kara Wren said quietly. "They'll see what we do." "Good," Vexer said with a tight, humorless smile. "Let them see. Let them witness the price of weakness." Around the bridge, the unease was growing. Some of the officers were shifting in place, avoiding eye contact. Even among his own species, Vexer could sense resistance. He didn't care. "This is what the Dominion has forgotten," he snapped. "This is why we've grown soft treaties, talks, conventions. We used to be feared. Today, we reclaim that fear." He turned toward the weapons station. "Officer Thex," he said, his voice sharp, "target their primary medical bay. Make it quick. But let the humans see exactly what we're destroying." Thex's clawed hands hovered over the console, trembling. "Sir." There are children in that section. That's an order, officer. Or are you refusing to carry it out? The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Then, reluctantly, Vex began to enter the targeting commands. Around the bridge, no one spoke. The hum of the ship's systems seemed louder than usual, like the dark spear itself was protesting. For a long moment, Vexer simply stared at the hospital ship on the screen. So clean, so bright, so vulnerable. He smiled. Let's send him a message. Outside the dark spear, space held its breath. A beam of violet energy lanced across the void. It struck Mercy's light square in the side, right where its main medical bay was located. The pristine white hull cracked and vented atmosphere, the force of the blast tearing through decks filled with patients and medical staff. The ship's emergency shielding kicked in immediately, but the damage was already catastrophic. On nearby vessels, sensor operators gasped. Messages began to pour across the comms. Dominion vessel, cease fire immediately. You're attacking a protected ship. There are civilians on board. Vexer ignored them. Target their engines next, he said calmly. I want no survivors fleeing the scene. A second blast tore through Mercy's light's port engine. The ship began to drift, lights flickering, escape pods launching in frantic streams. Medical personnel scrambled to load patients, many unable to move on their own. Across various species vessels nearby, shocked admirals and captains watched in disbelief. Sir, Kararin whispered, we're receiving emergency transmissions from inside the ship. They're begging for time to evacuate. Critical care units are still full. No mercy, Vexer said, his mandibles stretched in a cruel grin. Target the central core. Let's end it. Blake Chen looked pale. They're broadcasting Vidyaushik, Ward. Children in life support pods. Then let them learn young, Vexer snapped. The galaxy is cruel. Officer Thex's hands were shaking so badly he could barely input the command. The third shot shattered the central spine of Mercy's light, breaking the vessel into two pieces. Inside, chaos reigned. Human doctors shielded patients with their own bodies. Medical droids kept working even as air vents ripped open. One human nurse, blood on her face, recorded a final message. This is Laura Chen of Mercy's Light. We're under attack. To any ship in range, please help us. There are still hundreds of critical patients aboard. The message cut off in static. Somewhere in the silence, a realization was beginning to spread not just among Vexer's crew, but across every observer in the sector. The Dominion had just crossed a line no one thought anyone would dare, and they had done it to the wrong species. The bridge of the Dark Spear was silent. Commander Vexer stood unmoving, watching the drifting wreckage of Mercy's Light tumble slowly in space. Fires still flickered along its broken spine. Sections of hull had been torn away entirely. Tiny escape pods fled from the ruins like panicked white blood cells. Too few, too late. A low murmur broke the silence. Sir, said Kararin, her voice hoarse, her copper skin nearly white from stress. We're getting multiple quantum signatures, large-scale energy fluctuations. They're coming out of quantum tunnels. Everywhere. Vexer turned sharply. Define everywhere. Blake Chen stared at his display in disbelief. All around us, sir. Dozens? No. Hundreds of breach points. Ships are emerging from quantum space. Then the view screen lit up. One by one, enormous black vessels appeared around the remains of Mercy's Light. Their hulls were angular, seamless, their surfaces matte and cold. No insignias, no running lights, no communication, just warships, dozens, then hundreds. The bridge crew froze. These were not the typical human ships the Dominion had studied. Those were bright, utilitarian, sometimes even clunky in design. These vessels were sleek, terrifying like scalpels forged into dreadnoughts. A voice broke across every channel. This is Admiral Sarah Hawthorne of the Earth Vengeance Fleet, said a woman's voice, crisp and icy. You targeted our mercy. Now you will face our wrath. Then silence. No warning, no negotiation, just a statement of fact. The bridge of the Dark Spear descended into chaos. Officers scrambled to reroute power to shields to prepare for battle, but Vexer didn't move. He stared at the tactical display, watching human ships arrive in formation surrounding them. Sir, Blake whispered. The other species? Ships. They're withdrawing their diplomats, all of them, abandoning Dominion space. Vexor's mandibles clicked in rising panic. What? Confirmed, Kara Wren said. They've seen the humans' transmission logs, videos from inside Mercy's Light, the pediatric ward, the wounded. It's all being broadcast. They're showing what we did, Vexor asked. Yes, sir. Every screen in the sector. Blake's hands trembled. Sir, the human ships aren't responding to any hails. They're just holding position. Then, across every Dominion frequency, something began to play. A sound, a heartbeat. The soft, steady beep of a human medical monitor. Slow, rhythmic, fading. They're broadcasting a dying heartbeat, Kara whispered. The crew sat paralyzed, watching the red pulse on their monitors. Then the alert started. Multiple quantum signatures. Appearing in orbit over Dominion worlds, Blake said. Every major planet, dozens of human fleets, each positioned above population centers. How is this possible? Vexor growled. How did they move that many ships? Where were they hiding them? We're still tracking new arrivals, Kara said, her voice trembling. And sir, they're forming a symbol. What symbol? Vexor demanded. She turned the screen to him, a red cross. Above every Dominion world, the human fleets had aligned their ships in the exact shape of Mercy's Light's emblem. A symbol of healing, now burning like a warning in the sky. Then came the message. You considered our mercy a weakness, our compassion a flaw. You believe that because we choose to heal, we cannot harm. You were wrong. Silence followed. Then a timer appeared on every Dominion screen. 1 hour. A countdown. Kara Wren stared at it, her voice hollow. They're giving us time to evacuate medical facilities. They don't want us to accuse them of targeting hospitals. Blake looked up, pale. They're going to strike everything else. Then the systems on the Dark Spear blared with alarms. Our quantum drive is offline, Kara gasped. Quantum containment fields active. No ship in Dominion space can enter FTL. We're trapped. Vexor clenched the edge of his chair. Who activated it? Earth? She said. They've sealed the entire Dominion inside a modified section of spacetime. Quantum boundaries. Artificial physics. More readings flooded in. Sir? Blake whispered, pointing to Mars on the display. Look at that. From the red planet's surface, massive platforms were rising structures that had been buried beneath the dust for decades. Ring space stations, weapon arrays, shipyards. All previously written off as scientific outposts or mining facilities. On Neptune, resource rigs unfurled like mechanical flowers, revealing batteries of weapons that dwarfed anything the Dominion had ever built. Jupiter's storms lit up, and from within emerged new ships larger than anything seen before. Their hulls shimmered with active camouflage, phasing in and out of reality. Those aren't mining platforms, Kara whispered. They're fortresses. They built them in plain sight, Blake added, and we never saw it, a voice returned. Admiral Hawthorne, 20 minutes. Be advised, secondary containment grid is now active. Across the galaxy, the human fleets began forming energy webs between their ships, constructing a lattice of power that enclosed Dominion space like a surgical field. They're not just blockading us, Kara said. They're rewriting physics. This isn't a fleet, it's a scalpel. More ships emerged. Smaller, faster vessels flowed like liquid metal, weaving effortlessly through debris fields. Gravity control? Blake muttered. They're surfing space-time itself. Another announcement. 10 minutes. Weapon systems advancing to final stage. The ships began to transform. Their outer hulls shifted, plates moving into new configurations. Weapon ports opened, revealing crystalline arrays that pulsed with an unnatural light. Kara's voice cracked. Those aren't energy weapons, they're quantum shears. They don't destroy matter, they erase it. Then one small human scout vessel moved into position near a barren Dominion moon. Activating quantum shear array at minimum power. 3% capacity. Target, Section 4 of Dominion Moon Beta. The beam fired. There was no explosion, just silence. A perfectly smooth sphere of the moon's surface vanished cleanly, instantly, without any debris. Reality had simply stopped in that space. That was 3, Hawthorne's voice said. Would you like to see 100? Vexor finally broke. Wait, please, we surrender. The Dominion surrenders unconditionally. No response. 2 minutes, came the next calm voice. Surrender is not an option. Consider this. Education. Another voice followed, male, older, This is General Marcus Chen of Earth Strategic Command. Your mistake wasn't attacking us. Your mistake was misunderstanding us. You saw our hospital ships and assumed we were weak. You never asked why a species capable of harm chooses to heal. Let me tell you why. We remember our wars. We remember genocide, firebombings, nerve agents. We remember how good we were at hurting. So we made a vow. Every hospital ship we launch is a promise to ourselves never again. We don't heal because we can't fight. We heal because we've mastered it and chose to stop. 30 seconds, Admiral Hawthorne said. On the tactical displays, every human vessel's quantum shear arrays aligned with precise targets, military bases, orbital defense grids, weapons platforms, and fleets. Then, silence. 10 seconds, said the voice. Vexor could barely breathe. Time's up. And the shears fired. The Dominion's military might vanished. There were no explosions, no screams, just erasure. Orbital platforms ceased to exist. Ships disappeared from space. Entire military sectors were excised like tumors. No civilian casualties. Not a single home touched. The Dominion hadn't been defeated. They'd been dissected. The Dominion military was gone. Not destroyed, not defeated. Removed surgically, precisely, completely. On the bridge of the Dark Spear, the silence was unbearable. Commander Vexor sat slumped in his command chair, mandibles slack, eyes blank. His empire, once feared, had been reduced to silence in less than an hour. What remained was not conquest, but revelation. Across every screen in Dominion space, a single message blinked in bold, unmistakable text. You considered our mercy a weakness, our compassion a flaw. You believe that because we choose to heal, we cannot harm. You were wrong. Vexor could only stare. He had believed for so long that kindness was the domain of the weak, that mercy was a liability, something to be exploited. Now he was learning far too late that for humans, mercy was a choice, a restraint, a vow made by a species capable of unspeakable violence but committed to something greater. Kara Wren's voice, weak and hollow, cut through the quiet. Sir, new message incoming, text only. The screen lit up. Commander Vexor. Your actions resulted in the deaths of 412 patients aboard Mercy's Light, 307 medical staff, 889 children. We have removed your capacity to wage war. Now, we will demonstrate our capacity for justice. Before Vexor could react, a pulse of energy enveloped the Dark Spear. Not a weapon, something else, something colder, controlled, a containment field. Blake Chen stared at his console. Sir, we're being locked in a quantum stasis bubble. The ship's systems are frozen, time dilation active, but we're still conscious. Why? Why trap us? Vexor asked hoarsely. Then Admiral Sarah Hawthorne's voice returned. This vessel will be preserved as a reminder. Your bridge crew will be safely evacuated. But you, Commander Vexor, have an appointment in our medical bay. His blood ran cold. Medical bay, he whispered. Yes. You see, we've developed advanced quantum surgical techniques. We can isolate and preserve neural activity while editing tissue, perception, even experience. Your body will survive, your mind will remain intact. And you will spend the rest of your natural life experiencing the pain you caused, not as punishment, but as treatment. We are, after all, healers. The crew stared at their commander. Some looked away, others didn't hide their horror. Vexor felt it now, not guilt, not yet, but fear. Real fear. The kind that gripped deep in the marrow. Then it happened. A transport beam activated. His vision went white as he was pulled from the bridge. The last thing he saw was the wreckage of Mercy's Light still slowly drifting, still emitting a faint emergency beacon. A symbol of all that had been lost. A symbol of all that had been awakened. 10 years later, a new station orbited quietly in the place where Mercy's Light had made its last stand. Its name, Mercy's Promise, a pristine white hull, the red cross shining bright across its side. But now, that symbol no longer stood for neutrality alone. It stood for deterrence, for resolve, for strength through compassion. On the observation deck, Admiral Sarah Hawthorne stood silently, her dark uniform pressed and immaculate, hands clasped behind her back. Around her, medical vessels from dozens of species came and went, each one now equipped with Earth-provided quantum shielding. Each one protected by the promise Earth had made, never again. Behind her, footsteps approached. Admiral Laura Chen, now the head of the Galactic Medical Consortium, stood beside her in snow-white medical fatigues. "It's official," Laura said softly. "The new Galactic Medical Code has been ratified. Every species signed." Hawthorne nodded. "Even the Dominion?" "Especially the Dominion. Their successor states signed without hesitation." The two women stood together, looking out across space. "Amazing," Laura said after a moment. "How diplomatic everyone becomes once they understand the consequences." Indeed, the new law was simple. Any attack on a medical vessel or facility would be considered an attack on Earth itself. No war, no warnings, just surgical response. Hawthorne turned toward a smaller window, one that overlooked a quiet, sealed chamber. "How's our patient?" Laura's expression didn't change. "Vexer continues his treatment. His nervous system is quantum locked. Every moment of pain he inflicted, he experiences it, in sequence, vividly. The staff estimates another 50 years will be sufficient for full rehabilitation." Hawthorne nodded without a word. Outside, in the vastness of space, the new generation of hospital ships was preparing to launch. Sleek, efficient, powerful, designed in collaboration with Earth, but built by many hands. Medical innovation had become the new arms race, and for once it was a race worth winning. The Androman had asked for Earth's guidance in replicating human medtech. The Relians were sharing research on regenerative biology. Even former Dominion species had begun pouring military funds into healing sciences. "Everyone wants to learn from us now," Laura said, watching a new vessel depart. "But not our weapons, our healing. They finally understand," Hawthorne replied. "That true power lies not in what you can destroy, but in what you choose not to." The space around Mercy's promise shimmered slightly. Quantum defense platforms, disguised as navigational buoys, hung silently in orbit, watching, waiting. Angular, black, and sharp like surgical tools. They weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were instruments designed not for war, but for excision. "Earth has changed the way the galaxy sees strength," Laura said. "We taught them that mercy is a choice, a terrifying one when made by those with real power." A soft ping came from the comms panel nearby. Another transmission from one of the hospital ships confirming safe passage through a former conflict zone. No one dared attack a medical ship now. No one questioned what would happen if they did. Every medical vessel carried the silent warning beneath its peaceful hull. "If this ship goes dark, the sky will follow." Hawthorne turned from the window and approached a wall display showing the newly updated galactic navigational chart. Every medical beacon now registered across every system, like tiny stars. "If one of those goes offline," Laura said, "we'll know. And Earth will respond," Hawthorne replied without hesitation. "With precision." The legacy of Mercy's light lived on not just in words, but in action. Diplomatic reports revealed entire star systems redirecting defense budgets toward medicine and trauma care. Research stations popped up where once there had been weapons factories. Quantum healing technologies spread like wildfire across civilizations once obsessed with conquest. Not because they feared Earth, but because they respected what Earth had become. A civilization that had mastered destruction, and then chosen not to use it. On the edge of the system, a new memorial beacon shimmered in deep space. A quiet, pulsing red cross marking the exact location where Mercy's light had been attacked. It wasn't a monument to loss, it was a reminder, a warning, and a vow. Humanity had learned its lessons the hard way through blood and ash. 2 world wars and genocide. And because of that, they had become the galaxy's paradox. Healers who had once been warriors, surgeons who could erase cities, guardians who protected life with the terrifying knowledge of how easily it could be ended. Their mercy had not come from weakness, but from the strength to walk away from destruction and the resolve to return to it only when absolutely necessary. As another hospital ship left dock, its white hull glowing in the light of a nearby star, Admiral Chen spoke one last time. "It's strange," she said. "We built Mercy's light to save lives. We thought it would be a symbol of hope, and it was, but not in the way we imagined." Hawthorne didn't reply right away. She just stared out into space, toward the quiet place where Mercy's light had once stood, where it had died so that an entire galaxy could live differently. "We showed them that healing isn't weakness," she finally said. "It's the greatest strength a civilization can have, and now everyone knew it, forever." Let me know when you're ready for Idea 4, a full arc summary adapted for publication or presentation, or if you'd like edits, formatting, or translation. That Ayat Lacho Tuiduan Bandai 1392 Bang Hiang Amai Chan the Ganacho Yafor ChatGPT De Noi. Of course, here's the rewritten idea for the full arc legacy. Humanity's transformation of the galaxy through mercy and deterrence, in authentic American English, approximately 1990 words in length. This final chapter wraps the narrative, reinforcing the moral arc and the far-reaching effects of humanity's actions after the destruction of Mercy's light. Legacy of light, they used to call humans idealists. Foolish, some said, naive. A young species clinging to outdated dreams of peace in a universe governed by power. But that was before the galaxy saw what happened when you struck at the very thing humans held sacred. It started with a single ship, Mercy's Light. A white-hulled beacon of hope, sent into the stars, not to conquer, but to heal. It crossed battle lines, treated the wounded of all species, and asked for nothing in return. It was mercy made manifest, until someone destroyed it, and the galaxy learned what humans really were. Not weak, not naive, but terrifying. A change in doctrine in the years that followed the attack on Mercy's Light, the interstellar order changed almost overnight. Where once treaties had been suggestions and truces temporary, now they were honored without question. The Galactic Medical Code, written and ratified within months of the incident, became the most respected document in known space. Not because it was noble, but because it was backed by the most precise, efficient, and overwhelming force the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Earth Vengeance Fleet didn't occupy territory. It didn't install puppet governments. It didn't need to. Its weapons spoke clearly enough. Entire civilizations restructured overnight. Military budgets were reallocated toward trauma care and regenerative medicine. Strategic advisors became experts in public health. Generals were replaced by chief surgeons, and all of it came with Earth's full support. But beneath the generous aid packages and medical technology lay an undeniable truth. Attack one hospital ship, and you would never fight again. A new kind of power humanity had never wanted to rule. But they had learned the hard way through centuries of bloodshed on their own world that to protect what mattered, you needed to be ready for the worst. So they built quietly. They embedded their war machines inside gas giants and planetary rings. They hid dreadnoughts beneath the crust of moons and disguised weapons platforms as mining operations. They created the means to shatter worlds and then turned to medicine instead. Why? Because war was easy. Healing took strength. And it was that strength that now held the galaxy in balance. It wasn't tyranny. It wasn't empire. It was restraint. And it was terrifying. The fate of Vexor, no story of Mercy's Light, is complete without its villain. Commander Vexor, once a celebrated Dominion strategist, now lives inside a sealed quantum chamber deep within a human medical facility. His name is no longer spoken with pride, only with warning. He is not dead, nor is he imprisoned in the way others might expect. Instead, he is undergoing what Earth doctors call quantum empathic therapy. His neural system is stabilized in a locked feedback loop. Every second of pain inflicted on those aboard Mercy's Light is experienced by him physically, emotionally, fully. Not to punish, but to teach. To make him understand, doctors monitor his mind closely. They adjust the sequence when necessary. They explain each stage to him as it happens, calmly and clinically. They are not torturing him. They are healing him, in their way. And in this silent, carefully controlled existence, Vexor has come to know the one thing he once mocked: compassion. Mercy's Promise, where the hospital ship was lost, a station now stands. Mercy's Promise. It rotates slowly in high orbit, a gleaming symbol that merges peace with protection. Around it, Earth and her allies maintain a quiet, ever-present defense grid, a lattice of black angular stations, invisible to most sensors, perfectly calibrated to respond the moment any medical beacon dims. Every species knows the rule now. If a hospital is attacked, Earth does not send diplomats. Earth does not issue ultimatums. Earth performs surgery. This phrase is taught in military academies, engraved into spaceport walls, whispered in the corridors of government chambers, and no one dares test its truth. New alliances in the wake of the event. Old alliances fractured and new ones emerged. Species once skeptical of humanity now sought their guidance not in warfare but in healing. Earth opened its medtech archives, shared quantum shielding advancements, and trained thousands of off-world surgeons in its ways. Some called it diplomacy. Others called it deterrence. But everyone knew what it really was, a civilization that had mastered destruction and chose healing instead. The Andromen turned their warships into hospital cruisers. The Relians reclassified their military research stations into trauma rehabilitation centers. Even the fractured remnants of the Dominion swore never to field another warship, not out of fear, out of understanding. Cultural shift. The attack on Mercy's Light didn't just change governments, it changed culture. War memorials began to include tributes to medical workers. Battle hymns were rewritten to praise field medics and relief teams. Art shifted from depicting conquest to capturing moments of healing. Small human gestures that had once seemed mundane now carried sacred weight. Children in alien schools grew up learning the story of the ship that dared to care and the price its destroyers paid. They studied Earth's wars, not the sanitized versions, but the raw truth. The brutality, the genocides, the atrocities. And they learned that Earth's strength didn't come from avoiding war. It came from surviving it and refusing to repeat it. A warning in the stars above every medical ship in the galaxy now floats a small, shimmering device. A quantum medical beacon. It tracks vital signs aboard, logs security alerts, and if ever compromised, sends a signal directly to Earth. The signal doesn't say we're under attack. It says you cross the line, and everyone knows what comes next. Not fleets, not firestorms, but the quiet surgical arrival of ships that don't negotiate, don't threaten, and don't miss. They don't destroy civilizations. They remove their ability to harm cleanly, precisely, completely. The true meaning of mercy at its heart, the story of Mercy's Light isn't one of vengeance. It's one of restraint, of a species that could have broken the galaxy in half but chose to offer bandages instead of blades. A species that remembered its own darkest chapters and decided to be better even when no one else was. That restraint, that mercy is now written into the stars. It shines in every operating room, echoes through every rescue shuttle, beats quietly in every heart monitor aboard every hospital ship. A reminder that the ones most capable of causing harm are often the ones working hardest not to. Final words. At the 10-year memorial of Mercy's Light, Admiral Sarah Hawthorne stood beside Dr. Laura Chen on the observation deck of Mercy's Promise. The station was quiet as always, save for the low hum of life support and the soft blinking of distant navigational lights. Through the windows, a new generation of hospital ships launched, one after another. Sleek, shielded, silent. Hard to believe it's been a decade, Laura said softly. Feels like yesterday, Hawthorne replied. They still ask me about it, Laura continued. Students, patients, diplomats. They want to know why we responded the way we did. And what do you tell them? Laura turned toward her, eyes steady. I tell them the truth, that we didn't destroy an empire. We just removed a tumor. They stood in silence a moment longer. Then a soft ping echoed from the comm panel. Another hospital ship had just crossed into a conflict zone unarmed, unescorted, unafraid. Because it didn't need an escort. It carried Earth's promise. They called it a surgical strike, not a war, not a battle. Surgery. That's how it was recorded in the galactic archives. No territory was seized. No governments were overthrown. No enemies were annihilated, but entire militaries were unmade. And in their place, something far more enduring was built, an understanding, a realization that changed the nature of power itself. The day everything changed, long after the ruins of Mercy's Light were cleared and the last Dominion warship faded from the stars, one truth remained. Humanity didn't rise to dominance by conquering, they did it by choosing not to. The galaxy had expected fire and fury. What they got was a lesson. One delivered not with chaos, but with precision. Not with hate, but with calculation. The human response wasn't a message of revenge. It was a final exam. A civilization known for restraint had been tested, and the galaxy failed, and when humanity responded, it was not to punish, but to correct. The new understanding across thousands of worlds, children studied Mercy's Light in schools not just as a tragedy, but as a turning point. In history classes, they no longer memorized battle campaigns. They studied triage techniques and medical ethics. The names of doctors and nurses were now etched into textbooks beside political leaders and war heroes. One phrase became a universal proverb: mercy is not weakness. It is the final stage of strength. Even species that once prided themselves on conquest began to reconsider their values. Because they had seen something that shattered their old ideas of dominance, a species that could rewrite physics, and still chose to heal. Medical neutrality, reinforced by power before mercy's light, medical neutrality was a concept, a nice idea, often ignored when convenient. Now, it was law, enforced not by treaties or votes, but by the silent presence of Earth's orbital web. A small, sleek drone, unassuming silver, no larger than a suitcase, was now deployed aboard every medical ship in the galaxy. Officially, it was called a humanitarian assurance device. Unofficially, everyone called it the scalpel. Each one carried a quantum transmitter tuned to Earth's medical grid. If a hospital ship was attacked even by accident, the drone sent a single pulse, one signal, and the response was immediate. No debate, no appeals. Just silence, and then precision. Hospitals reimagined in the wake of the tragedy. Every major species requested help from Earth to rebuild their medical infrastructure. Not because they lacked the ability to construct facilities, but because they wanted what Earth had: resilience. A single Earth hospital ship could treat thousands from dozens of species. Its trauma pods adjusted automatically to different biologies. Its doctors understood the anatomy of beings they'd never met before, and they weren't just healing, they were observing. Every time a patient was treated, data was collected not just to cure, but to prevent. Every scan, every vital sign, every molecular signature was archived in a universal medical library accessible across known space. For the first time, medicine was no longer species-specific, it was interstellar. Humanity didn't just respond to crises anymore, they stopped them before they started. The rebirth of the Dominion didn't dissolve overnight. At first, there were whispers of rebellion, quiet plans in back rooms about rebuilding their fleets, reclaiming lost territory. But those whispers died quickly, because their colonies weren't isolated anymore. Now, Dominion civilians had access to Earth-funded trauma centers. Their children were being taught by hybrid teams of Androman and human teachers. Their streets were patrolled not by soldiers, but by autonomous rescue drones. And above every Dominion world floated something that hadn't been there before, a white satellite bearing the red cross of Mercy's light. They didn't fly Earth's flag, they flew Earth's promise. From defense to diplomacy for Earth, power had never been about control, it was about deterrence. And now, their greatest weapon wasn't hidden inside a gas giant or buried beneath Mars. It was visible for all to see. It was trust. The trust that Earth would protect the innocent, that it would never strike first. That it would give every species a chance to evolve, to grow, to change. But also, the certainty that if someone violated that trust, they wouldn't survive the hour. It was not the fear of destruction that kept peace. It was the understanding that Earth could destroy everything and chose not to. A warning on every wall inside every hospital built after the fall of Mercy's light. One phrase is engraved on the main entrance in multiple languages. To harm one healer is to invite surgical justice. Mercy is protected. Some thought it dramatic, but no one argued with it, because the galaxy had seen what happened when that line was crossed. It wasn't a fleet that came. It wasn't a war. It was an incision, precise, deliberate, irreversible. Vexor's legacy in a sealed medical archive orbiting Earth, the most restricted room holds the case file for one Commander Vexor. It includes neurological scans, psychological profiles, and detailed treatment logs. The last entry reads, "Patient continues to express regret. Neural empathy circuits remain active. Rehabilitative progress, 72%. Estimated time to completion, 41 years. Every year, the Galactic Medical Council reviews his case. They don't debate his sentence, they review his experience. Because it teaches them something valuable, that even the worst can be reformed not through punishment, but through perspective. Vexor's mind is intact, his body maintained, his memories sharpened. And each time he relives the cries of children on Mercy's light, he understands them a little more deeply, not out of clarity. The New Age galactic historians now refer to this era as the Age of the Cross. Not because Earth ruled it, but because one red symbol reshaped everything. Diplomats no longer speak first of borders or trade. They speak of healthcare access, disease response, emergency triage. The first question asked at any negotiation is no longer how many ships do you have? It's how fast can you get medics to the front? And in every major port, next to the flags of 100 worlds, there flies a white banner with a red cross, not as a claim of dominance, but as a shared vow: we will heal. We will protect. And if we must, we will remove the infection. Final reflections from the beginning: humanity didn't set out to be feared. They only wanted to be better than their past. But when Mercy's light fell, they made a choice not to escalate, not to conquer, but to teach. Their lesson was unforgettable, not because of its violence, but because of its restraint. They showed the galaxy that the most dangerous beings weren't the ones who struck first. They were the ones who could strike last and never needed to. And that, in the end, is what the galaxy truly learned. The only thing more terrifying than a species that knows how to kill is a species that's learned how not to. In the grand timeline of the galaxy, Mercy's light was just one ship, one mission, one moment. But its destruction became more than a tragedy. It became a turning point, a scar the universe could never cover. A warning that echoed beyond politics, beyond weapons, beyond even war itself. The lesson it taught wasn't about strength. It wasn't even about mercy. It was about choice. The galaxy changed in the aftermath of Earth's response, the surgical strike that dismantled the Dominion's entire military infrastructure without harming a single civilian. Every species took a step back and reevaluated their values. Empires that once measured power in fleets and firepower began to understand a different kind of dominance. Mastery over one's own capacity to harm, and restraint became the gold standard. Humanity had proved it wasn't just about who had the biggest guns, but who had the discipline to keep them holstered. Who could stand in the fire and choose to build instead of burn. And no one forgot. They couldn't, not after what they saw. The cross as a warning: every hospital ship now bears a symbol on its hull, the Red Cross of Mercy's light. But it no longer just means help is coming. It means, do not cross this line. Every world knows that if a single one of those red crosses goes dark, Earth won't send diplomats. They won't send threats. They'll send the same scalpel they used before: precise, clinical, inescapable. No one wants to see that again. They learned the hard way that the human instinct to heal does not cancel out their capacity to hurt. It only hides it, like a sword tucked behind a surgeon's coat. From war machines to rescue ships across the stars, entire fleets were repurposed. Ships once designed to lay siege to cities were turned into mobile hospitals. Combat drones were reprogrammed to carry vaccines and medical supplies. The energy used for destruction was redirected into healing. And it wasn't because humans forced them to. It was because every species saw the alternative. It was easier to follow Earth's example than to risk seeing them at full power again. But it wasn't fear that drove the change. It was inspiration. A realization that strength could be expressed through compassion, and that peace wasn't a default state, but a conscious, continuous decision. The face of strength had changed once. The most respected titles in the galaxy were Warlord General, Admiral. Now it was surgeon, paramedic, nurse. The face of strength had changed. The same doctors who died shielding patients aboard Mercy's light became symbols of courage. The same medics who had treated children from enemy species were now remembered as the truest warriors. Not because they fought back, but because they stood their ground when others would have run. They held the line not with rifles, but with outstretched hands. And in the end, their courage woke up something in the galaxy it hadn't seen in a long time: hope. Vexor's last report years into his treatment, Commander Vexor, now barely a shadow of his former self, submitted something extraordinary. A document. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for release. It was an observation. I once believed power was the ability to take what you wanted, to bend others to your will. I now understand power is the ability to hold that strength and choose not to use it. To heal when you could hurt. To show mercy when you could demand vengeance. That is the kind of power humanity possesses. And it terrifies me in ways no weapon ever could. The document was published in medical ethics courses across known space. It became required reading. Not to glorify Vexor, but to remind future generations what arrogance looks like and what it costs. Mercy's flame, a single flame, burns aboard Mercy's Promise, the station that replaced Mercy's light, housed in a small chamber with no guards, no barriers, Anyone from any species can visit. There's no plaque, no monument, just the flame. It's called the living reminder. It never goes out. And if it ever did, every quantum-linked ship in Earth's fleet would activate simultaneously. But no one lets it go out. Children visit the chamber and place handwritten notes beside it. Survivors leave drawings. Diplomats sometimes kneel. The flame doesn't belong to Earth. It belongs to everyone. And it reminds them that true peace is built, not won. Back on Earth, on a quiet hill overlooking a memorial garden in Geneva, there's a statue of a nurse from Mercy's Light. Her face is streaked with blood. In one hand, she holds a child. In the other, a data pad with the emergency broadcast she tried to send as the ship fell apart around her. The plaque reads, "We are healers, but we are not helpless. Cross this line, and you will learn why." Every year, leaders from across the galaxy gather there not to grieve, but to reaffirm the oath that humanity turned into a doctrine, to protect the innocent, to heal the hurt, to fight only when healing is no longer possible. A real-world lesson, maybe the most powerful part of this story, isn't the quantum weapons, the space fleets, or the surgical precision. Maybe it's this. What if we live that way now? What if the world we live in, our world, chose restraint the way humanity did in that story? What if nations, communities, and individuals remembered that having strength doesn't justify its use? That the highest expression of power isn't domination, it's discipline. Imagine if medical workers were treated as the front line of defense. Imagine if hurting the innocent triggered not rage, but accountability so precise it left no doubt, only understanding. Imagine if our response to cruelty wasn't just retribution, but a collective decision to never let it happen again. That's what this story really challenges us to ask. Not what could we do, but what should we do when we have the power to choose? The legacy lives on in the end. Mercy's Light wasn't just a ship, it was a mirror. It showed the galaxy its reflection raw, unfiltered, and gave it a chance to change. And the galaxy did, not because it was afraid, but because it finally saw that real strength. Looks like someone willing to bleed for a stranger. Like a nurse sealing a child into a pressure suit. Like a doctor recording one last message. Like a healer holding the line. And like a world that answers cruelty not with vengeance, but with clarity, with purpose, with mercy that cuts deeper than any weapon ever could.